I took a break, but now I'm never leaving. Yeah, I feel like something woke inside. Heartbeat working overtime. Everything was motorized, but now I'm up and more alive. So let my family know I'm fine and it's a new day. Cause there's a whole lot I gotta say. So I'ma tell the world that I'm on the way. I promise. When we're back, we gon' celebrate. Yeah, baby, save the day. So raise your glass to them better days. Cause they're coming. I know I'm gone and it's getting late, but I'll be there, baby, save the day. Cooped up, I ain't left my place in a few months. I'm going back to basics like a crew cut. Feeling used up, but now I'm grew done. Grinding till I make a few bucks. Somebody do some, ayy. Yeah, I've been depressed, yeah, I've been a mess, but I guess you gotta hit your worst to make it to your best. And I still have my rainy days, I doubt those ever fade away. But I've been seeing color instead of all those other shades of gray, and I just had to find myself. I know life is great and I just needed to remind myself. Yeah, I remember that a flower don't stay in bloom all year long. So one bad day don't make it all go wrong. Opportunity knocks while I just hold the door. I know that I just gotta focus more, and I can finally see that heaven I've been going towards, with angels singing praises through these vocal cords. They wanted me to tell the world that I'm on the way. I promise. When we're back, we gon' celebrate. Yeah, baby, save the day. So raise your glass to them better days. Cause they're coming. I know I'm gone and it's getting late, but I'll be there, baby, save the day. This my soul in a vessel, through this whole instrumental. Every dough from the pencil, I'm a voice, not an echo. Yeah, this my wants and my fire, this my constant desire. This the sound of overcoming all those doubts in my mind. And it'll be worth it, it won't be perfect, but I'll have plaques and I'll have purpose. I'll have love and I'll have family, I'll have friends that understand me. I'll have a wife and the kids and a life for the rent, even though life getting shorter. One day I'll have it all, just not in that order. Tell the world that I'm on the way. I promise. When we're back, we gon' celebrate. Yeah, save the day. So raise your glass to them better days. Cause they're coming. I know I'm gone and it's getting late, but I'll be there, baby, save the day.
She gave everything, she was such a blessing, but from day to day, she would change her ways. Give me her love, then she'd take it away, take it away, take it away. Just like the reaper, thought she was the one for me, turned out she was a sleeper. Sleeping on me, in this game of love, I was too blind to see, it'll never be enough. So good is never good enough for her, she won't stay for long while she's bringing you down, but she'll suck you right in with what she's doing. You'll want her somehow in her final bow, like an elevator, elevator. She'll take you up and bring it down, down, down. She's like an elevator, elevator. She'll take you up and bring it down, down, just like an elevator. No, she's not like you and I. So don't be fooled by those pretty eyes, pretty eyes, pretty eyes. Nothing behind them, nothing but cold, cold, cold winter nights. Freezing on me in this game of love. I was too blind to see it'll never be enough for her. Never, 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 never enough. take it from me, I've learned my lesson. She gave everything, she was such a blessing, but from day to day, she would change her ways. Give me her love, then she'd take it away.
I didn't plan it, you know that. I didn't mean to hurt you, darling. I wasn't ready, we both weren't. But look at you, you're everything I want. Just give me another chance to show you. Please hear me. I'm just trying to tell you, come with me. And we'll be everything we want to. Just give me another chance. I know I should've known better. I know I should've never taken off. I know I should've known better. Cause when you're not around, everything feels wrong. When no one's ever treated me better.
Hello, friends. How is everyone today? Glad that I could get on today. I was gonna get on this morning, but I ended up sleeping in, and then I had a bunch of stuff I had to do this morning, so I was running around doing stuff. But I'm on now, so that's exciting. Hope everybody's having an awesome day. I found a video that we're gonna watch today about, this is an Christian missionary, and she's gonna tell us about all the tactics they used to use, in order to try to convert Jews into Christianity. So I'm interested in this because, I like to know, what Christians actually think. Because when I was growing up in the church, it was very much like Jews rejected Jesus. They didn't understand, what God was doing and how he wanted to bring everyone into the kingdom, and so there's a lot to unpack with that and to really think about, because the problem with a lot of Christians is they don't understand what the Jews actually believe. Because if they actually knew what the Jews believed, they wouldn't try to convert Jews as much, I feel like, because they would realize that a lot of what they believe doesn't line up with Jewish prophecy and what Jews actually think the Messiah is supposed to be. So I'm very interested to see what kind of tactics they had her do and other missionaries do to try to get them sucked into Christianity. Which I have to say, I very much respect Jews for the fact that they hold on to what they believe because they have it backed up. I mean, it's not all backed up by evidence. I know a lot of the Bible isn't, but I respect the fact that the evidence that they do have that backs up what they believe, they don't, I don't know, it's hard to explain, but basically it backs up what they actually believe versus Christians who just have a lot of things taken out of context and they don't make any sense. And like we were talking about the other day when we were watching Rabbi Tova, how it was a lot of the verses are ripped out of context, and some of them have even been changed in order to create a narrative around Jesus that was never actually written about him in the first place. So let's get on with our lovely video. Oh no, that's not what I wanted to do. Clicked the wrong button. All right.
From the description of tonight's event, I'm a former missionary and a convert to Judaism. I didn't always say that so easily when we first got here. I wanted to fit in, and I wanted my children to fit in, and I didn't want us to be seen as different. I could be just like anybody else, and nobody had to know that I was a ger. I've worked in the counter-missionary field for about 15 years now, and it's not been publicly. All of my efforts were behind the scenes, and most of you had no idea of my background. I was raised as an evangelical Christian. My father was an evangelical minister. I was taught to be a missionary from a young age, as is everybody in the evangelical church.
That's gotta be so hard. Because I think about, like, all of the people, like, a lot of my friends and stuff were, like, pastors' kids, and some of them, like, actually left the faith. And, like, seeing just how hard that was for them and how they still, like, cling on to this idea that one day those kids will come back to the faith because they think it's all just a, I don't know, a phase. That's what they always told me. Like, they think it's just a phase that people go through, and, you know, people run away from God and then they end up coming back when they get older. But I don't see it as a phase for, like, me and the people who are more like me, where we think logically and we look at evidence and stuff, because it would be a phase if I ran away from God because I was mad. And that's a huge part of what the Christian, like, church will tell you is, like, oh, these people ran away because they were mad, or they wanted to rebel against God, or they wanted to live in sin, or you know, any of those excuses that they like to give. But the problem is, in today's society, where a lot of the kids today, we're not running away from the faith because we want to sin, or we want to live lives our way, or we're mad at God. More people today are leaving the church because we're looking at the evidence and realizing that the evidence that was presented to us growing up is not, like, true, and it doesn't line up with what we know. It doesn't line up with, like, you know, science and things like that. And I know everybody makes fun of that, like atheists saying, oh, science, but it's like, the big thing for me was, like, because I was an evangelical Christian, like, the Adam and Eve story had to 100% be true in order for there to be a reason for Jesus, because the first Adam had to come down and sin, and then Jesus had to be the second Adam, and he had to come down and die to undo what the first Adam did. So, it's weird, because the way I was raised was, like, a Bible literalist, where if the things in the Bible didn't line up with reality, there's no way that it can be true, and there's no way that it can work within the story that they were telling us growing up. Like, if Adam and Eve weren't real people, and the story of the Garden of Eden wasn't a real place and a real thing that happened in history, then there was no reason for Jesus to come down and to save everyone and to undo what Adam did, because Adam never existed, and he never, you know, had the fall, which created the reason for Jesus to come. And I just, sorry, I forgot to turn my phone off. But it's just weird, because, you know, as a Bible literalist and as someone who believes those things, once I looked at science, and not just, like, any science, once I looked at evolution, I realized that that story couldn't be true, because Adam and Eve were created as humans in the beginning. Like, they didn't evolve over time, and evolution, in my opinion, because of what I've seen in the evidence that backs it up, completely shows that the Garden of Eden story cannot be true. And if the Garden of Eden story is not true, then there's no reason for Jesus to come. Because the whole point was he was supposed to undo what they did in history. So, and that's my viewpoint on it, because I was raised evangelical. And it's hard to explain that to people who aren't literalists, because they'll be like, oh no, it was, like, metaphoric, but I can't speak to the metaphoric one, because I wasn't raised that way, and I don't know how they see it that way. But when it comes to, you know, leaving the faith, and if your parents are, like, a huge part of the church, where they're the pastors or the elders or whatever, like, high authority in the church, I mean, it's hard enough to leave and be like, this is me, this is gonna be me for the rest of my life. But it's even harder when it's like, this is who I am, this is who I'm going to be for the rest of my life, and they're not okay with that. Like, they pretend to be okay with it, or they just flat out tell you they're not okay with it, because they have this mindset that it's a phase or it's something you're going through, and you're gonna eventually come back. And it's hard to stand there and be like, no. Like, I literally cannot come back to this faith because of the knowledge that I have. And for me, I would never want to go back to that faith because my life is so much better as an atheist. And it's hard to get them to explain, to like learn that too, because they've been told their whole life, like, life isn't worth living if you're not living it for God, and you're not going to be happy. And when they see atheists who are happy and living their lives, you know, peacefully and actually enjoying who they are, it's a threat to their very existence. And unfortunately for them, like, the evangelical church is slowly dying out, at least where I live, and I'm kind of glad, because I see a lot more harm than good coming out of Christian churches today.
The Great Commission is the cornerstone of evangelical Christianity. It's the mission to convert people. It's a big deal. It's a commandment from Jesus himself, and it's an obligation. It's taken very seriously, and I took it very seriously. Bringing as many people as I could to Jesus was a goal that I set for myself every day. I was pretty good at it. I found it pretty easy to share Jesus with my peers, and I didn't have any problem inviting my friends to church. It wasn't until my adult life that focused.
Yeah, I feel like it's always easier when you were a kid, because when I was a kid, I was like super gung-ho for Jesus and super like, hey, let's invite friends to church and save as many people as we want. And I think that's a tactic that the church uses in order to get more people into the church, because it's way easier to bring in like younger people whose brains aren't completely like formed and, you know, don't have all that logic and stuff. It's way easier to mold their minds into what you want it to be versus older people. Because like, I read a statistic somewhere, and they told us in church too that like over like the age of 18, the rate of people like being saved drops a lot more than like if you save them if they're like before 10 or something, which makes sense, because that's how you get people in religion. You get them when they're young, when they don't have critical thinking skills and they're not able to, you know, tell the difference between reality and fiction, and really dive into those things and realize like what is actually happening. It's so much easier to like indoctrinate and brainwash a child than it is to indoctrinate and brainwash adults. Which, I mean, there are some adults you can definitely indoctrinate, but it's a smaller percentage, because people are going to critically think about things, and they're not going to just sit there and be told something's true without looking up the information they know to make sure that it's true. So I don't know, and that's another frustrating thing about the church, is people don't understand that either.
Turn towards Jews. That involved learning more deceptive techniques that were not typical Christianity. The most important thing to learn was how to get access to a Jew, and then once you get access to a Jew, how to present and the language used to present Jesus in a way that wouldn't send them running. Unfortunately, I was successful among less affiliated Jews, those who had very little knowledge of their own Bible. I had no doubt in my mind that Jesus was the Messiah, and I had learned through the church all of the text in Tanakh to prove that. Reaching Jews that I encountered at the JCC was easy, but I was attracted to the Orthodox world. It fascinated me that the Orthodox people were so dedicated and committed to God, and I couldn't understand how they could be so religious but not know Jesus. I couldn't imagine anything more beautiful than bringing somebody.
It blows people's mind when other religions gives you the same feeling that it would in your own religion.
That already had such a strong connection to God, to Jesus, their Jewish Messiah. As you can imagine, that line didn't go over so well with frum Jews. Religious Jews are more knowledgeable, and they didn't fall so easily for my emotional plea or my repackaging Jesus with a Jewish flavor. To reach them, I was really going to have to learn the text and know how to argue them, the verses in Tanakh that prove that Jesus is the Messiah. In my mind, if I could just get a Jew to read these passages, they would see Jesus in them just as clearly as I did. I tried, and they didn't make it so easy for me. Some of them found it very fun to taunt me. They would tell me things like, what you're saying is mistranslated, or you're taking things out of context.
Which is so funny, because Christians will do that to other people. When they try to, like, explain the Bible or something to them, they'll be like, oh no, you're taking that out of context. Especially when it comes to, like, the atheist community. I have noticed that a lot, because if you tell a Christian that something in the Bible says something that they don't agree with, and then you show it to them, they're like, oh no, you're taking that out of context. Like, that's not what it really says. And it's just funny to me, because a lot of Christians don't even, like, know what's in their own Bible. They don't even know, like, the book they're actually following and what it actually says and what God actually did, and they're completely ignorant to their own religion, which makes it even more interesting when you talk to them about other religions, because not only are they ignorant in their own religion, they're ignorant in all the other religions, because they don't want to let things into their minds that might make them think that their religion isn't true. Which really bothers me, because they will stand there and claim that they have truth, and they have the only truth, and they know they have the only truth, when in reality you can't claim you have truth if you don't have all the facts. I mean, I've said it before, just like when you debate, you have to have both sides. You have to know what both sides believe and know, and the evidence that both sides have. And Christians don't have that. They're told their entire lives they are to follow this one book, but they aren't told that, you know, this book lacks a lot of the evidence that backs up what they think is true. And even the old, like the Tanakh, you know, when we were watching Rabbi Tova the other day, like he said, even the Tanakh completely shows you how wrong Christianity is, because the things in the Tanakh that they used in order to form Jesus as the Christian Messiah don't even line up with what the Old Testament actually says. Like, they're out of context verses that are used to create this agenda around Jesus.
Which I thought was absolutely absurd. I would argue back with them and say, you're just regurgitating what your rabbis tell you. And if you would just look at it yourself, you would see. I would quote a specific verse, and they would ask me about the verses around that verse, as if that mattered. I didn't think that was relevant. What does it matter if I know what Isaiah 52 says when it's Isaiah 53 that talks about Jesus? The context was Jesus, and I just didn't see a problem. We were speaking different languages, and they seemed to be having fun, but for me it was very frustrating. Eventually, I was convinced that maybe I need to look at the text a little bit differently. I needed to find another way to present this if I was going to be successful. Knowing that I was still absolutely right, I set out to learn the entire chapters surrounding the verses that I was quoting to them. That didn't work out so well for me. Suddenly, what was once very clear to me wasn't fitting so well. Reading things in context, the prophecies that meant Jesus didn't exactly mean what I thought they meant.
Yep.
I was confused, and honestly, I was a little scared because I wasn't able to make these things work. I went back to those Orthodox Jews just a little bit more humble, still knowing that I was absolutely right. Somehow Jesus was in there. But the tables were turning, and I started to ask them about the text. That's when I was introduced to an audio series.
It's always interesting to hear people's stories about leaving Christianity, because even, when I left, I became an atheist because I didn't find any evidence that proved that the Bible, to my understanding, is most of it is not true, or a lot of it is exaggerated or fabricated. I mean, not all of it. There are some historical things that have happened in the Bible. I'm not going to say it's all not true, because I know that's not true either. But it's interesting, too, when I look at people who come out of the faith and go into another faith. And, her story sounds very similar to mine, where it was like, I was looking, I was trying to find it, I was trying to make sure this was true, I was trying to make sure it lined up with what I believed. But it didn't line up with what she believed, just like, the evidence I found didn't line up with what I believed. So our stories are very similar in that fact, but we took very different paths, because she decided that, from reading the Bible and talking to Orthodox Jews, that she wanted to become a Jewish person, versus when I looked at it and saw the evidence, I saw, because of the lacking evidence and because of the things I know that are in the Bible that don't make sense and they don't line up with what I know about the real world, then I took the path of atheism. So it's always interesting that people can come to different conclusions, because, I came to believe, not believe, but, from the evidence I was presented and the evidence that I looked at, I don't believe. I hate the word believe, because it's not believe. It's like, I don't think there's a God. There we go. It's basically, I know, it's kind of like my opinion, but it's my opinion backed up with evidence that I've looked at, where her opinion is, she's looked at the evidence, she's looked at the verses that she thought were about Jesus, and she came to realize that they weren't about Jesus, and they were really about, the prophecies for that time, or it was about, things God was telling people, or telling the people of Israel, not, these dual prophecies or whatever, where they were trying to talk about Jesus. Which is so funny, because, I have talked to, people who study Jewish things and stuff, and one day, I really want to interview, a rabbi one day. That's one of my goals for my channel, is, to actually sit down, probably for my YouTube channel, sit down with a rabbi and actually, have a one-on-one conversation about, the Jewish Messiah and the Christian Messiah, and why they're different, and why the Jews don't accept it and stuff, because I think hearing it, I've watched a lot of rabbis on YouTube, but actually sitting down with someone and, going over the things that I was taught and really, diving deep into those things, I think would be really important for anyone who watches my channel and, wants to actually understand, what the Jewish people believe versus what Christianity says, because they're two different things. But this just goes to show you that people's opinions can lead them to very different conclusions. So, yeah, my opinion led me to the fact that I don't think that there is a God, and there's no reason for me to think there is a God. Where hers was, she still believes in God, but she's leaving Jesus behind because it didn't line up with what she was taught as an evangelical Christian. So she's gonna convert to Judaism.
Which is now available for free online. There was one Jew who thought that perhaps I was ready to see the error in my ways. He was very wrong. I'm pretty darn stubborn. What he gave me was the jackpot. It was the Jewish response to Christian missionaries. These were the arguments that they were using against me.
That's cool, because that's by Rabbi Tova, who we watched the other day. So, yeah. I might have to, if that's online, that's definitely something I should look into, too. Because I feel like that would be really important to talk to people within the Christian world about things that don't line up, and help them understand how it doesn't line up with like the Jewish prophecies and things like that.
So now all I had to do was learn how to counter these arguments from this rabbi. If I could destroy the arguments of their rabbi, I would be able to reach them. That was going to be a piece of cake. And that's when my entire world...
That sounds like me when I was leaving the church. Like, I'm gonna prove that the Bible's true, and I'm gonna follow all these apologetic books, and then it was like, nope, I'm wrong. I am completely and totally wrong. I have no idea what I'm talking about.
world crumbled. I'm not exaggerating when I say that these tapes were an atomic bomb in my life. I couldn't counter this rabbi. Not a single argument. One by one, he completely destroyed every one of the prophecies that I knew proved Jesus. He was right. The Christian Bible had purposely mistranslated verses, and it was with an agenda to make them appear Christological.
Yep.
Everything I knew by heart completely fell apart. Nothing meant what I thought that it meant. I felt betrayed. I was lied to. I thought, how could the church be that evil? For somebody like me, whose every moment was focused on being a good Christian, this was a full-on religious and emotional crisis. It was traumatic. I went through every stage of grief. It was anger, betrayal, sadness, and hopelessness. My entire identity.
It's crazy that her entire, like, her story sounds so much like mine when it comes to, like, leaving the church and looking at those verses and realizing that you had been lied to, and that everything you once believed doesn't line up with what they told you, and that it doesn't matter what you do or say, like, that's not going to change the fact that the Jesus of the Bible that people claim was the Messiah, really, he's not the Messiah. And I don't know. I think that was always, like she said, like a bomb went off in her head. Like, that was kind of a big thing for me too, is realizing that I wasn't following the God I thought I was following, and that I was really worshiping, like, most likely I was worshiping a charismatic leader who was just a human. Like, I had been following another human being my entire life and worshiping this being and honoring this being and crying out to this being that died over 2,000 years ago. Like, if that person actually existed, which I don't want to get into that whole argument, because, you know, there's a whole argument on the historical versus the mythicist idea of if Jesus was a real person or not. There was actually a little fight on my last video about that, which I'm totally fine with if people want to, like, state their opinions and stuff. But like I've said in the past, it's not a big deal to me whether Jesus was real or not, because it doesn't back up the idea that the Jesus of the Bible actually... Oh, thank you, the Lord Falconess. Thanks for following. It doesn't back up the idea that Jesus was the Messiah. And, you know, people will say, like, oh no, this is what it says, but it's really, it's not. And it's frustrating, and you can't get people to see things that they don't want to see, unfortunately. As much as I would love to go out, like, and that was a big thing when I left the church too, was like, a huge part of me wanted to go out. Like, my angry atheist stage was like, I need to go out and tell people all these things that are incorrect about the Bible and they don't understand. And I was in that mindset that if people saw what I saw, they would understand, and they would see the same thing I saw. But unfortunately, we don't live in a world like that. And, you know, I did talk to all my friends who were in the church, and I showed them verses and stuff, but it didn't matter because they honestly believed through the experiences and through what they had been taught that it was true regardless of facts. And it doesn't matter how many facts you tell them, unless they're willing to open their eyes and really look at it and really see what it says versus what they believe it says, you're never going to be able to change someone's mind. The only person who can change someone's mind is themselves. I mean, you can plant seeds of doubt and you can plant, different ideas in their heads that they can, jump off on and go look for themselves. But they have to be willing to do that. And unfortunately, a lot of people in the church don't want to do that because they don't want to know that they are wrong. They don't want to know that what they believe doesn't line up with what we know about the world. And a lot of people have put a lot of time, into following this religion. And if they found out that they basically were lied to their entire lives and they're in like their 60s or 70s or even 50s, it's like, it feels like a gigantic waste of time. And they can't go back and get those days back. They can't go back and get back all those days at church and all the money they spent giving tithes. And it can be very devastating. And I'm glad that I learned when I was younger. I mean, I wasn't like super young. I was like 27 or 28. But at the same time, it's like, I have so much more life ahead of me. And I'm really glad I do, because if I had found out like when I was 60, 70 years old and I only had a few years to live and realized that I had wasted my life on something that wasn't true, like, that would be absolutely devastating. I mean, it was devastating to me just in my 20s. I couldn't even imagine how devastating it would be if you're older and you had literally given your entire life to this thing only to realize that it was a waste of the one life that we know we get.
He was lost because Jesus was the core of who I was as a person. Everything I said in my life, everything I did was centered around that belief. Without that, getting up in the morning had no meaning and no purpose. Because to me, Jesus was very real. He was somebody who was one with me since I was a child. I believed that he was with me every day, that he walked with me, that he directed everything I did in my life. So to discover that he was nothing more than an imaginary friend, that was beyond painful. At one point, I prayed so deeply to God, and then something hit me. I became enraged. I threw my pillow at the wall and I screamed, "You don't even exist!" And when you find yourself in such a hopeless place and you realize that there's not even a God to cry out to, I can't explain it, but that's just unbearable. I did eventually muster up the courage to call this rabbi directly. And I asked him, who was Jesus? If he's not who I thought he was, please just tell me that there was some purpose for his existence. Did he even exist? Somehow that rabbi knew that I needed to know more than...
I don't know if it's even, I don't know. I guess for her, she wanted to know. She didn't want to think that her entire life purpose was wasted, like I said, because she had found out that what she believed wasn't true. But, I think really looking into... I don't know. I don't believe that the Jesus... I think there probably might have been someone during that time that could have been, walking around claiming that he was the Messiah or whatever, but I do not believe that, the miracles and things that they claim in the Bible ever happened. I think a lot of it, like she said, is made up to make Jesus into this almost like a superhuman, Superman type person who was going to come and save humanity. And if Jesus really did exist, I tell people all the time, if Jesus really did exist, he was a Jewish man. He was not a Christian. And he would not be happy with the Christians of today because they don't follow what Jesus taught. You know, Jesus said that the commandments were, like, forever. I mean, the Torah says that the Torah is eternal. Like, it's never going to change. So, I 100% believe that if Jesus was a historical person, he followed the Torah, or he tried to follow the Torah. The whole idea that Jesus was God and that he did all these miracles and stuff, I think a lot of that was just, like, made up after he had already passed on, and a lot of people made up stories about him. I mean, I just did a YouTube video on, and St. Paul can go fuck off a cliff. Exactly. Yes, Paul did a lot of damage to Judaism in general, because he made it seem like Judaism was, like, not the only, like, the Jews weren't the only people that God chose. He was like, oh no, this is how God's going to bring the Gentiles into the kingdom, and everyone's going to be able to be in the kingdom of God. But from what we know about, like, the Jewish religion and what we know about the time period that Jesus lived in, he very much was probably a Jewish man, and he would not be okay with what Christians do today. And saying that you don't have to follow the Torah, and you don't have to, you know, do all the things that he said you have to do in order to be part of that kingdom it's interesting. One could argue that he was the original MLM master who basically wanted to convert Gentiles to Christianity. Yeah, and when I was in the church, I had no idea that Paul had made up a lot of that stuff. Like, I was always told it was, like, the things that Paul taught were from God, because Jesus had come to him in a vision, and it never really clicked in my mind that, like, that vision could have been, you know, his brain malfunctioning or something. Like, it 100% could have been just something happening in his mind that he couldn't have controlled. But, I mean, even if that story hadn't happened, like, Paul still completely changed the entire narrative that Jesus had preached while he was on the planet. There's an old Jewish story that claims Paul was a rabbi agent that tried to destroy Christianity. Huh. That's funny. But it's also interesting, because if they were trying to, like, destroy it from the inside, it's weird that he would, like, basically let all the Gentiles in, because the Gentiles are the ones who didn't know anything about the Bible. And maybe that was the point. They didn't think that Gentiles would actually believe it, but instead, like, they did, and it grew into this huge cult, which is still around today, which is crazy, because there's so many, like, false prophecies and things in the Bible that just don't line up with what we know happened in history. And it's just so funny to me today because, you know, in the past, like, the people weren't even allowed to have a Bible because the church didn't want people to be able to read those things, because they knew if you, like, you read the Bible yourself and you actually saw what it said versus what they were trying to get across, like, it wouldn't work, because so many people would look at the Bible and realize that a lot of the stuff in it didn't actually happen, and a lot of the things were, like, false prophecies and stuff. And surprisingly, like, we live in a world where people have, like, I mean, I'm an atheist and I still have, like, 4 or 5 Bibles in my house, and I think of all these Christians that just have Bibles all over their house, and we're in such a time where, like, people can read and they are literate and they are able to, like, have critical thinking skills and stuff, and people still get sucked into these religious ideas and they still believe it even when they read it for themselves. Like, it's just mind-boggling to me that so many people follow it, when all it would take was for you to actually, like, read it, like, within context, like she said, and actually realize that what you're being taught and what is being said in these books doesn't line up with what we know. And, like, when we watched the video the other day with Rabbi Tova talking about how a lot of the verses in the Old Testament that they attribute to Jesus are completely ripped out of context and do not align with what Jesus, taught and said and believed in his day. So, and like you said, he's like, take two Bibles, put them next to each other, like, read the Old Testament version, read the New Testament version. I mean, it's pretty obvious that these versions were changed in order to make Jesus into something he wasn't. It was that entire agenda to make Jesus the Messiah, when, if you actually look at the original Old Testament or Tanakh verses, we know that that's not what it says. And when you go to the New Testament and realize people had changed the wording to make it say something else, it blows everything that they teach you out of the water, and you can't go back from that. And that's the thing that drives me crazy about Christians, because they're like, oh, you're just really you'll come back. It's a phase. Like, it's not a phase. Like, we studied this for so long, at least for me, like, I studied for like 6 months straight trying to figure out if Christianity was true or not. And because of all that studying and because of like looking into all the evidence, like, I realized that I had been lied to and that it wasn't what I was told it was. So, if you look closely, Matthew did a really bad job wedging Jesus into the prophecies. Oh, he did a terrible job. Yeah. I have another friend who comes on here who's like, he's like super into like the Old Testament and the prophecies and stuff. And we talk all the time about that because he like knows what they actually say and what their actual meanings are from the Tanakh. And he's like, they're completely wrong. Like, everything that Christianity teaches is completely wrong from what the Jewish translation of these things really are. So,
just that simple answer. He told me that what I was doing was struggling to fit Jesus and file him away in some way that made sense. But the bottom line is, if Jesus was not the Messiah, then nothing else matters. That was obvious, but at that moment, that simple explanation was powerful. I went on crying to him, explaining my trauma in figuring out and finding out that there was no God. And he stopped me. He explained, you simply discovered that Jesus is not the Messiah. God is still very, very much there. In my bubble of grief, I was simply not able to separate Jesus and God, because in Christianity, they're very much one and the same. I'm pretty stubborn, so I don't know how, but somehow he got through to me. And my life from that point on took a whole new direction. I set out to learn Torah from scratch, which, because my mind was so filled with an entirely different belief system, that wasn't so easy. When I began to learn Torah without my...
and I think that's a major difference when it comes to, like, studying things. Because, like, for me, even studying, like, the Bible from a Jewish perspective, there's still a lot of things that I don't think happened, because the evidence shows that these things didn't happen in real life. So I guess for me, that's the whole reason that I just kind of rejected religion in general, because for me, if like, yeah, the New Testament's not true, but is the Old Testament true? Because, if the Old Testament true, then it must, the Old Testament God must be real. But at the end of the day, the evidence didn't point to that either. The evidence very much pointed to the Bible as a book, like a whole book, does not line up with reality, and it does not line up with the evidence that we have for things. And I mean, not all of it. There are some historical things thrown in there, here and there in it, but overall, like, we know there's a lot of things in the Bible that don't line up with what we know about the world, and which makes sense, because the Bible was written during a time when people didn't understand the world as much. They didn't have, like, science and archaeology and I don't know, all these other things that you use. I've looked at whole history. There we go. I was trying to think of the other one in history, and how many of the stories in the Bible were just created. They were mostly created for the Israelites and to kind of make up a mythology of where they came from and how, you know, the earth was created and stuff, because that's how a lot of other cultures did that too. Like, if you look around the world, there are so many different ideas about creation, because every culture had their idea about how the earth came into being and how people came into being, and hi Leon, and just how things work, because they had no idea. They didn't have the tools that we have today. And so it makes a lot of sense when you look at it from, like I said, the cultural context that the Bible was actually written in, because these were people who sat around and absolutely had no idea how things worked, and they were doing the best they could with what they had. But in today's world, we don't have that excuse, because we have evidence to back up a lot of the things that we know about the world. And we don't have all the evidence. Like I said, the best thing for anyone to do who's like a critical thinker, if you don't have the answer, like, it's okay to say, I don't know. But the problem is, like, Christians have been taught I don't know is like a bad thing. And instead of waiting on the evidence and waiting on getting an answer, they just want an answer. So in order to get that answer, they shove God into it, which doesn't work. Like, you can't just shove whatever you want into that space and expect it to be true. Like, yeah, you can say it was God who did these things, but they think God knows, and that's all we need to know. Yeah, and unfortunately, that's what really hinders. It hinders critical thinking, and it hinders the ability to grow and to look for the answers. Because instead of looking for the answers, they just expect God to know it, and so they don't need to find it. And it stunts humanity in a way that's not good, because instead of us like progressing and making our world a better place because we have the resources to do it, and people have, you know, we have the ability to search out those answers. But a lot of people are reluctant because they think God has a plan, and us searching out those answers is going to somehow throw a wrench in God's plans. So, but, you know, people have their own ideas on things. And like I said, the only person who can change someone's mind is that person. Like, no one else can change someone else's mind. It's like, yes, I can sit up here all day and talk about my atheism and talk about why I left the church and talk about all the evidence that I have found and all the things I've learned and, you know, everything that I know now. But that's not going to stop a person from believing. The only way you can stop a person from believing is allowing them to find the answers themselves and hopefully come to truth by actually making sure that what they're being taught is truth versus they're just doing what they're told because they want it to be true, even if it's not true.
My Jesus filter, it was so beautiful and so inspiring. When I learned the traditions and the mitzvot and the meaning behind the mitzvot, they were so special. It inspired me to do more. And I see every mitzvah as an opportunity to kiss Hashem and to thank Him for all of the blessings in my life. The conversion process, that was pretty grueling. I think every convert will tell you that they go through their own personal mitzrayim. But today, I am so thankful. My children don't know anything about Christianity. They speak Hebrew. I have a son that's a soldier in the IDF. I'm so proud of all of them. They have a religious day school education that I envy very much. And they learn Torah in its purest form. I love learning Torah, and I'm always amazed at how deep the Torah goes. Something significant that I learned about Christianity
Thanks for the $10, Leon.
was the deeper I delved into Christianity, the more the Christian Bible and the theology, it fell apart and it became more confusing. Unlike Torah, when every level you unpeel and the deeper you go, the more it makes sense and the more clear it becomes. I met my husband and we married in Hebron a year after my conversion was complete. Being married to a doctor, our home becomes a clinic pretty often. We laugh that our Shabbos table doubles as an OR. Sometimes that's
I'm not going to be mean here, but why do most Christian women eventually turn into Skeletor? I don't know. I don't feel like I was, well, I guess I was a skinny little girl too, so. I think maybe because the church is not a healthy place for women. It's just not. Like, you're pretty much taught, like, you're not your own person. You're like property. You're property of Jesus and God, or you're property of your husband. Like, and I feel like a lot of men in the church are very, like, I don't know. They like, young, skinny women who almost like the men in the church want supermodel wives. And they push for supermodel wives. And I don't know why that is. I don't know why they have this idea that women in the church should, like, look beautiful all the time and basically, I don't know, because growing up, I think about a lot of women who were, like, in my church and, like, in my circles at, like, even at, like, high school and stuff. They condition you to be, like, these perfect wives and mothers, but you also have to be, like, a freaking model. And if you're not, then it's like you're not living up to God's standard or something, which is weird because, I mean, in the Bible it says you're not supposed to, like, wear jewelry and be all beautiful and stuff, but I feel like Christian men are a lot more picky about that, and they're a lot more like, my wife needs to be a supermodel and look hot all the time, and Magic the Gathering, that's hilarious. Yeah, and I think it causes a lot of issues too, because I've known a lot of people, like, when I was in high school, there was a huge amount of girls that were, like, bulimic and anorexic, and I went to, like, a private Christian high school, so I have to wonder, like, if Christians just put way more pressure on women to look a certain way. Because, like, if you're Christian, you have to, like, take care of yourself and be this skinny, cute person, but you also need to, like, be modest and, only give your goodies out to your husband or keep them for God until you get married. Like, I don't know. Massively. Tanya's gangrene. Oh my god. Yeah, I grew up with a lot of people who had a lot of issues because of the church. And I think a lot of that has to do with mental stuff too, because I think about growing up in the church and I had severe anxiety the entire time I was a Christian. And I think that really puts pressure on you too, because that anxiety can get to you in not a healthy way and can make you lose weight and make you feel like you're stressed out all the time and you're not able to do what you're supposed to do because you're constantly trying to live up to this idea that the men in the church and God has created in your mind. I don't know. It's weird. And there's just such a, I don't know. It's not good. There's nothing healthy about being in a church when you're a woman, because you're a second-class citizen and you don't belong to yourself, and you either belong to God or you belong to your husband. Like, you don't they make it seem like you don't have bodily autonomy at all. And if you have any bodily autonomy, then you're a heathen, or, you know, any of the slang words that they use against women who do things against what they think is correct and proper. Or it's like, you can only be with... Yeah. It's like, you have to be property of your husband, and you can only be with one man, and if not, you're spoiled goods, and if you're spoiled goods, then you can't do what God wants you to do, so... It's frustrating, and I think it really does take away from being mentally healthy in the church when you're a woman. I can tell you right now, like, I have dealt with a lot of mental issues because of being a woman in the church and being someone who was basically told their whole lives that my entire purpose in life was to grow up, get married, give my husband whatever he fucking wanted, and have children and be a mom. But also I have to be like super prude and super like, I don't even know, like, you're not allowed to like just explore your own sexuality or explore who you are. You have to live in this bubble, and you know, I've been slowly breaking out of my bubble, and it's taken a while, but, you know, all the things I'm going through right now is just breaking that bubble more to it's like, because of my upbringing and because of all of that anxiety and that constant, like, you have to be this. It's not even like rebelling, which is so funny because people will look at stuff I'm doing now and be like, oh, you're just rebelling, like, blah, 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 you don't want to be a Christian or whatever. But to me, it's like, it's not rebelling. It's freeing myself from the shackles that I was in for so long. And being able to just explore and understand who I am. Because for a long time, I did not have that option. I didn't have the option to explore and figure out who I was. And I wasn't able to, like, you know, go crazy and make mistakes. And a Christian told me to wipe the word God off my forehead. Christianity is about control. It really is about control. And unfortunately, for women, it's way worse because we're not, like, we have to live up to this certain standard in order to be a godly woman. And it sucks because it really messes with your brain. And it's messed with my brain for a long time. Especially growing up in purity culture, because I always felt like everything I did was wrong. Even when, like, these are just natural things that happen in your life. Or, you know, these are things that you just, I don't know. It's hard to explain, but it's like, I grew up in a church that was, like, they were anti-masturbation, and it's like, like, I'm not gonna just not do that. Like, sorry. But it was horrible because growing up, I always felt like every time I wanted to explore my sexuality or do something, I could not do that because it was like hurting God to be who I am. And it's just, it's so frustrating. And I'm slowly letting go of those things. Don't ring the devil's doorbell. Yeah. I'm slowly letting go of those things. And I think where I am in life now, it's like I realize, like, because I'm basically getting a second chance at life because, you know, now I'm an atheist and I'm getting divorced and, like, I get to just basically start all that over. Like, I am a different person, and I'm gonna be a different person, and I am gonna go into things a lot differently than I did when I was a Christian, a 20-year-old Christian who got married, you know. You know, I have kids now and stuff, and that's not really what I want anymore. Like, I want to find someone who actually respects me and loves me for who I am, and you know, someone who will love my kids too, and someone who, you know, will support me and will love me and will be okay with the things that I talk about. And you know, I have changed my idea on marriage. Like, I don't know if I want to get married again, and if I do, it will be very much, like, it will be a while before I get married. Because, like, there are a lot more things that I need to figure out for myself and explore for myself before I settle down with someone else, if I ever want to settle down with someone else, you know? And I don't know, I've just changed my viewpoint on a lot of things. And, like, you know, I was raised in that whole culture where it's like, you save yourself for marriage, and you basically are with one person forever. And it's like, now that I'm an atheist and, like, I'm getting a divorce, it's like, I very much think that that's not how I think anymore. Like, if I do ever get remarried, like, I definitely gonna be sexually active before I get married, because I learned the hard way that if you are not sexually compatible, it makes life way more difficult. So, but these are things they don't tell you in the church. Like, they just say that, like, oh, your life will be amazing, like, if you save yourself and you are committed to one person and you're able to live your life with that person and you both follow God. And but that's not the reality that we live in. People are different. People have different opinions. They have different ideas of things. And for me, it's way more important to know what you're getting into before you get married. But, you know, 20-year-old me didn't know anything about that, you know? I was this good little Christian girl, and I was going to do what God wanted me to do, because I hate getting in trouble, and I don't want to do things the wrong way, and I don't know. It's so hard to explain to people, like, there is a lot of things you should know before you, like, get into relationships and stuff, and the idea that Christians tell so many, like, young people to get married and to basically just give everything to God and live their lives, it doesn't work out the way you thought it would work out. And even if my husband and me were still, like, in the church and stuff, I still think we would have had issues, like, because we're just both very stubborn people. But they don't talk about that stuff. Like, when I was raised in the church, it was very much like, oh, you find this person you like and you get married. It wasn't like, oh, you need to take time to, like, understand their personality and understand their sexual preferences and understand, like, what their goals in life are and what they, you know, what kind of family they want. And no, it's like, find someone you like and get married. And that was basically it. And I'm definitely going to raise my kids very differently. And, you know, I don't, like, if people don't want to get married, you can be committed to someone without being married. And there's a lot of downsides to it. And there's a lot of downsides to jumping into marriage after a year of dating or 6 months of dating versus, you know, being together for like 3 or 4 years and then getting married. So anyone who's Christian out there, these are my words of advice. Do not get married young, and do not get married after like 6 months to a year, because the infatuation period has not cooled off. And it's not good for you in the long run.
It's 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. He always answers, and I always have to be
Summons this health rise. Okay, let's see how to convert Jewish people.
cognizant in every situation of his professional and ethical obligation that comes with being a doctor. If he's driving and we pass by an accident, it's my responsibility to gauge the situation and see if there's an emergency response person there. If there's not, I know that I have to jump into the driver's seat and he has to run. Wherever we are, it doesn't matter if we're on vacation and he's in his bathing suit. If we hear that phrase, "Is there a doctor?" he can't ignore it. He has a skill set and a training that's ingrained in him. When there's a medical situation and everybody's standing around not knowing what's going on, he recognizes the symptoms and he knows exactly what he's dealing with. Being a convert isn't so easy. I know we have quite a few in here tonight, and I think they would agree with me They would like to really just be accepted as any other Jew. I told you that when we first arrived, I had decided that I was not going to tell anybody about my past. We had a new place, a new life. Many of you followed my photography, my political involvement. But on this issue, I kept my mouth shut, at least publicly. I was watching and learning about the missionary situation here in Israel when I got here, and it was worse than I imagined. When I first arrived here in 2015, the reported number of Jews identifying themselves as Messianic was 50.
I'd be in that church with my book of shadows just writing and nodding along. Also, lady, you're breaking the laws of the Old Testament.
15,000, and there was 120 Messianic congregations. I thought that was terrible. Privately, I was volunteering for an organization in the counter-missionary field, and I was trying to do whatever I felt I could to contribute. But in a very short period of time, I watched those numbers double. By 2020, the number of Jews identifying themselves as Messianic had turned to 30,000. And the directory...
I've missed so much. Stupid Walmart taking forever. Yeah, Walmart's crazy. I went to Walmart yesterday and the lines were so long and I was like, what is happening? And then I realized that, like, it's the week of Christmas and everybody's lining up with shopping carts full of toys. So it didn't even, like, occur to me that, like, everyone was Christmas shopping on the Sunday before Christmas, when I just went there to pick up a few things, like just grocery stuff. So yeah, we have to give money to the temple for commercialism. Yeah, had to get my wife's medications. Yeah, those are important. So what did we miss? What did Omega miss? This lady is talking about, she used to be a Christian, and she used to try to convert Jews to Christianity, and then she found out Christianity wasn't true, because the Jews, like, showed her the actual verses. So then she realized Christianity wasn't true, and then the Jews basically told her that even though Jesus wasn't God, there's still a God. So she converted to Judaism. So that's basically her story. But I was talking about how it was interesting that her story sounds a lot like mine, and we took very different paths, because for me, it was like the entire Bible doesn't make any sense to me, so I took the path of, like, being an atheist, where she was like, I still need God in my life, so she took the path of being a Jew. So
of Messianic organizations that I was watching had grown to 300. Now more than ever, there are intense websites and media campaigns targeting Jews for conversion. Today, there are more than 200 websites in Israel alone that are dedicated to bringing the gospel message to Jews in English, in Hebrew, and in Russian. What was mind-boggling was that Jewish leadership was forming partnerships with these groups. In some cases,
So if you don't know, like, a big part of, like, Christianity's converting Jews to Jesus is because, like, in the Bible it says, like, the Jews will come to Jesus at the end of time, and so a lot of them will be saved. So that's the main reason why a lot of Christians, like, really focus on, like, saving Jewish people, because they think it's gonna, like, usher in the end of the world, and the more Jewish people they can get to convert to Christianity, the quicker that Jesus is gonna come back. So it's, it's all this agenda to make the end of the world happen, because they really want Jesus to come back, even though we know that's not gonna happen.
finding that missionaries were running government programs. People just had no idea what they were dealing with. We had meetings occasionally. I would pull up the organization's website in English, their newsletter, and their YouTube channels, and I would show they're converting Holocaust survivors. They're converting youth, our soldiers, the most vulnerable in our population. They simply had no idea. The more I learned how ensconced our government is with people that I thought should be on the most wanted list, our biggest threats, the more I realized that I can't be silent.
It's so crazy to me that, like, she basically went from being, like, a super gung-ho Christian to, like, go out and save people, And now she's like a super gung-ho Jew trying to like get people out of Christianity and like tell them that they're wrong. But I don't know, maybe if you have that passion in you, that just kind of happens. Because people say the same thing about me. They're like, oh no, you didn't change. You're just like super gung-ho about atheism now. And it's like, yeah, but I'm not forcing people to be atheists. Like, I'm fine if people have their own religious ideas, as long as they're private. But my issue is with living in America and realizing that Christianity is like the main religion here, and realizing that there are so many people trying to overtake our government and make it a theocracy really frustrates me, because, you know, like she's talking about, like, she doesn't want her country to be turned into a theocracy for what they believe. But for me, it's about human rights, because even if I wasn't an atheist, I mean, even if I was just a deist or agnostic or whatever, I would still be up here trying to champion people's rights, because Christianity is trying to destroy anyone's rights who aren't Christian. And it's so hard to get people to understand that, because, you know, the church teaches that, you know, the end days are coming and that people are going to be torn away from the church because they're going to believe lies and they're going to follow these false prophets and stuff. So people are so gung-ho about, like, it's so weird because, like, they want the end to come, but at the same time, like, they don't want anyone to take away their rights. And they have this ridiculous persecution complex that if we give rights to anyone else that is not a follower of God, they will take advantage of us and take away our rights. Which isn't true. Like, as someone who came out of the Christian church, like, I have lots of friends who are still Christian, and I'm not gonna be like, oh, you can't worship your God because, you know, I want LGBTQ people to have rights. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm fine with you being a Christian, as long as you're not mixing it in with other people's rights. And the problem is, especially in America, is that that's not what's happening. Christians want to have all the rights to themselves and not let anyone else have rights. And it's frustrating. They want the end to come, but are scared and don't like what needs to happen before the end does come. Yeah. So, like, they're, like, trying to take control over a situation that they claim God is in control of, but at the same time, they don't want it to happen. So they try to take control over the situation so that it doesn't happen in the way that God said it's going to happen, even though it would happen anyway. So it's confusing, and it doesn't make any sense.
I didn't seek out a life as a missionary. I didn't choose it as a career, and knowing what I know now about the deception of the church, it's not a title that I'm proud of by any means. But I do know that world, and it does give me a unique skill set. I know the language, and I can see things that most Jews, they're just not seeing.
Christianity at its core doesn't make sense. Nope, it doesn't. It's one of those things that you have to be indoctrinated to believe, because it's pretty much the only way you can believe it. Because it doesn't make sense, and it doesn't line up with what we know about the world.
I slowly started coming out of the closet. I started to share how and why I know about the tactics that are being used to convert Jews here in Israel. I founded B'nai, and our first big case started with a 5-minute video of a missionary that was boasting about how they had acquired a license to broadcast the gospel of Jesus Christ throughout the land of Israel. Over and over, the CEO of God TV declared that they were going to bring 9 million Jews to Jesus. I couldn't believe that the government allowed this. That video went viral overnight. The situation made international news for weeks as petitions began and court cases unraveled. Rabbi Singer, thank God, had just made Aliyah. Working together on this issue, we were able to get that channel off the air. From that point on, we publicized case after case. B'naiinu has been making major headlines just about every month since we started. From God TV, we went on to expose missionaries operating Jewish agency programs for lone soldiers and for Olim. Followed by that was a black minister, Bishop Plummer, who arrived here and immediately started 5 churches. He was targeting Ethiopian Jews. Then there was a coffee shop in Tel Aviv.
It's not like they're being forced to listen to it. Yeah. Thinking about Israel, I think it's a lot like America, where like most of the people in America are Christian, so like we are very gung-ho about people becoming Christians and following Jesus, where in Israel, I feel like it's a lot more, they're a Jewish state, so they're doing the same thing that America's doing, where it's like they're trying to create this theocracy around Christianity in the United States, and Israel's trying to create this theocracy of Judaism in Israel, because that's what they believe is what is supposed to happen, because the Jewish people are God's chosen people, and they're the ones who are supposed to occupy Israel according to the Bible. So it's no different. It's no different than what's happening in America. It's just a different religion. That's the only difference.
They were going after Holocaust survivors. They were luring youth with music concerts and then sharing Jesus with them when they got there. There's a humanitarian aid group who was proudly boasting to its supporters, actually admitting that they were exploiting the tragic situation that families found themselves in during the pandemic. They were telling their supporters that the coronavirus was giving them the opportunity to bring Jesus to the Jewish people, and that the lockdowns were part of God's plan for the second coming. From Jews were recently being tricked by casting calls. When they asked, they were actually lied to and told that it's not a Christian film, only to be presented with a legal waiver from Christian Broadcasting Network.
Oh God,
Of course,
CBN.
only once they were in the middle of the desert at 4 o'clock in the morning. These frum Jews later discovered through our reports that it was in fact a Jesus film that they were featured in. Then there was a missionary who was using children to distribute Christian materials to other children in the...
I almost wish, I know this is crazy, but I almost wish like Jesus would come back and just tell the Christians that they are completely wrong, because I think they would be in utter shock. Like, they'd be like, what?
in the playgrounds. It's illegal here in Israel to proselytize to children, but that only applies from an adult to a minor. So they're using other children to reach Jewish children. Then, of course, there are the ones that I'm sure you're all familiar with. The Elk case, portraying himself as a rabbi in French Hill, followed by the Buckles, and then the Edelmans. Many of us were personally involved in that one. Besides the deceptive agenda and the lies, those were clear cases of immigration fraud. And now there's this terrible case in Phoenix, Arizona, the Dawson family, a father and son who are portraying themselves as rabbis and participating in all kinds of Jewish rituals. It's left behind a halakhic.
I don't understand, like, why Christians think it's okay to lie for Jesus. Like, let's lie to people and say we're Jewish and say that we're following the Jewish laws and stuff, but we also believe that Jesus is the Messiah, which we know is not Jewish because it doesn't line up with what we know about the Jewish Messiah at all. I just don't understand that mindset where it's like, it's okay to lie if it saves people, but it's not okay to lie for anything else. But it also doesn't make sense because they were... when I was in Sunday school one time, they were talking about how, like, oh, like, if you were the one hiding Anne Frank, like, would you turn her in or would you hide her? And most of the people in Christian Sunday school said they would hide them. even though we're told in Sunday school that we're not supposed to break God's law and we're not supposed to break, like, the laws of the land. But like they said, like, they would rather break that law and save someone than, you know, not break it and have that person die. Which gets into the whole idea of morality and subjective versus objective morality. And, you know, Christians don't talk about those things because that would completely throw what they believe out the window.
Mess. I'd love to take credit for these, but the truth is these cases were only successful because Jews cared enough not to just hear about them, but after we publicized them, they raised their voices and demanded that something be done about it. Without that pressure, we couldn't have gotten the government to revoke the license for God TV. We couldn't have gotten them to sever the relationship with the missionaries in Tveria. There's still a lot to talk about, but I'm going to leave the rest to Rabbi Singer. I really thank you for all of your continued love and support to me personally. Going public with my story.
She should do this with the 700 Club. That would be great. But I feel like she'd get a lot of backlash from Americans, because I'm sure a lot of Americans watch that. I mean, there's people in my family who watch those. I remember growing up in my house and that being on the TV. And my parents bought into all of it. I mean, I grew up super conservative Christian. My parents would watch, like, 700 Club. They would listen to Rush Limbaugh every day after school. That's what I heard. Rush Limbaugh on the on the radio coming home from school. Like, I was very much indoctrinated, not just in Christianity, but in major conservative, like, politics, and basically told Democrats were wrong and they were dumb and they shouldn't be doing what they're doing, even though they never explained to me why. You know, you shouldn't be a Democrat or a liberal. Like, it was always just like, well, they're against what God's against, so we can't follow them. Okay. It wasn't until I was, like, an adult that I realized I had been lied to, and it was very much just, it's just Christianese. A Fox News child? Oh, yeah. Yep, my parents were super into Fox. And unfortunately, my mom is very still much like, she's a Fox person. She thinks COVID is, like, a made-up thing and the mark of the beast for the freaking shot. And yeah, she's still very much conservative Christian and very much, like, believes in conspiracy theories and stuff. Like, honestly, it wouldn't shock me. Well, it doesn't shock me that she definitely has a lot of, like, mentality towards, like, what the Q people believe. Sadly. Like, she might not claim that she believes those things, but a lot of her leanings are towards that cult. And yes, I honestly believe even if she claims not to be, she believes a lot of the stuff that they believe. So, and my sister is too, and her husband. So that's a whole, yeah. I think that's why I appreciate my brother, because he's a liberal Christian, so he's a lot more accepting of things and definitely doesn't lean towards the Q stuff, where my sister and my mom definitely lean towards the Q stuff. Like, in not a healthy way at all. But, yeah. And I'm the atheist in the family, so... Breakfast where we're talking about how we'll steal the elections again. Yeah. Us always, stealing those elections. Even though, all the fraud that they found was on the Republican side. But they won't tell you that. Or, you know, they don't believe it. They think it's all propaganda and lies.
And launching B'nai Nu is largely because of the love and the support that I've been getting right here. I'm very grateful to you.
That's pretty cool. I didn't realize when I clicked on this that she worked with Rabbi Tova Singer. But that's pretty cool because we've watched some of his videos. And I really like him. I've been like told there's other rabbis too that I need to watch, so I might do that too. And hopefully one of these days we have a stream with me and the Awoken One. Like we want OA and AO. Oh yeah. Like we want to do a stream on like the actual Jewish Messiah and like what, I don't know, maybe like what he was supposed to be and like the prophecies and stuff in Daniel versus what Christians say, because he's super like into that stuff and he knows so much. Like he sent me all of his notes and stuff from studying all that stuff, and like he wants to like go to rabbi school and all that, so it's really fun to talk to him and like see the difference between Christianity and Judaism and just how wrong Christians get a lot of the things in the Bible. So hopefully one day we get to do a stream on that, because I think that would be great. Even like, I don't know, maybe a series. We'll see. He wants to start his own YouTube channel too, so I've been like trying to help him with that too, because he has so much knowledge. It's insane. Like he's the Old Testament. Whenever I have questions about Old Testament stuff, he's always the one I go to. So it's really nice to talk to someone who knows what they're talking about and like is in the community, as opposed to like talking to a Christian. Or I mean, I do want to talk to an actual like rabbi at some point, hopefully, but that might be a while, because with COVID and stuff still going on, like I would rather do it when we didn't have to like wear masks and stuff, because it makes it a lot more difficult to like understand people. But we'll see what happens. I'm still getting my footing under the whole like interviewing people thing. Like I'm still learning just how to like do my own live streams and stuff, so like going out and interviewing people is going to be a whole different experience. But yeah, I would love to go out and like just interview different, even just like different religious, I don't know, they're not all called pastors, but just different religious people, and like see what they believe and why they believe it and stuff. I mean, when I was in college, I did a religious like studies course, and they brought in a couple people to like do that kind of stuff, because they did we had like an Islamic, I don't know what they call them, it's like a pastor, I don't know what they actually call their pastors, but he came in and told us about like his trip to Mecca and like the 5 pillars of Islam, and just some of, you know, him being raised in that religion and stuff. So that was really interesting. I was trying to think who else came in, because we had a couple of different religious people come in and talk about stuff. I don't think we had a Jewish like rabbi or anything come in though. I don't remember. And I was trying to think, I thought there was like a thing where we had to go to a different, maybe that was like extra credit or something, where you could go to a different, did you have to wear the veil? What? No. No, I did not. I'm still in America, like, and he came to it was Christian, college, so I'm sure he knew, like, we weren't gonna be, like, wearing those kind of things. But, no, I was thinking about, like, I think there was an extra credit thing where you could go to, like, a different, religious service or something, but I didn't actually do that, which I don't know why, because I feel like that would have been something I actually like to do. But I was just thinking, I'm like, how many other religious services have I really been to? And the only one I can think of is like Mormon. When we went to my Utah trip, we actually went to a Mormon church, and I stuck out like a sore thumb because all the girls there like wear dresses and skirts, and they said we could wear pants, and I wore pants and just like a nice shirt, and everybody was staring at me like I was crazy. So I was like, apparently in Utah, and if you go to a Mormon church, you have to wear a skirt. But yeah, that was a whole different experience, and like meeting people, and oh my god, you could tell like the entire time we were there, the guys were hitting on all of the girls, and they were like desperate to like get us to like them. And it was weird because it was almost like they were trying to like we were only there for like a week, and we only went to church 1 week, but like the guys kept coming to like the Christian Mormon house that we had to like talk to the girls and stuff, and you could tell like they were chatting us up, and like they were legitimately like trying to like convert us. And I don't know if it was like because they liked us and they wanted us to convert and like marry them, because like that's a huge part of it. And because the church that we went to was a lot of young people and we were all college age, it's like, you know, there's some new hot girls here, let's try to convert those girls and, you know, marry them off. It was just weird. It was weird because the entire thing seemed like it wasn't really about religion. It was very much like, we need to get women and they need to be our wives. Like, we need to flirt with these girls, so. And I don't know how much of that is like just because we were college kids, or if it was very much like because they're taught like you have to get married in the temple and stuff to like be a god and get your own planet and all that stuff. So I don't know. It was just weird that like we told them we were Christian. Like we're not Mormon. We are very much Christian. But they were honest, like dogs fighting over pieces of chicken. It was weird. But okay. But I think that's the only like other religious service I've really been to. I have been to a Catholic funeral though. That was interesting. That was really weird because, you know, I was raised Protestant, so going to a Catholic funeral, I felt like I was completely out of my element. I'm like, what is happening? Like, I do not understand. I wore a shirt that said science doesn't care what you believe when missionaries came to my place for a Bible study. Nice. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe one day I'll do like a whole series on maybe going to different religious like places and talking to people or something. That's always something that I thought I would like to do, but I don't know, we'll see. I also have to make sure like it's in a safe environment too, where I'm not just like you know, have people around me and stuff. It's always like the thing with being a girl is like I would love to just go interview people and stuff, but at the same time it's like I always feel like I have to be on guard even if I'm just gonna go like interview someone. So, and maybe that's just because of the bubble I was raised in. I'm not saying everyone in the world is bad, but I definitely have trust issues when it comes to people, so I definitely like need to make sure I do everything I do, like even for my YouTube, is in a safe place. So, and I can always, I don't know, meet them in public places and stuff too, so I don't know, we'll see. I have lots of, that's the thing with like, we will protect you. That's the thing with like being kind of like a public figure, is like you have to be careful about that kind of stuff and like who you actually talk to, and make sure you do it in a place where you're gonna be safe and stuff. But we'll make it work. And I have friends around that if I need to, I can be like, hey, you want to go with me? I'm gonna go interview this person. Like, so we'll see. And also, as a YouTuber in general, I have so many ideas, so many things that I want to do, and so many things that I wish I could do, but at the same time, like, I'm human. I only have so many hours in a day. Like, yes, I would love to, like, interview people. I would love to make animations. I would love to do live streams. I would love to, you know, all the creative things I want to do. And I know I have time to do them because, like, even if they take me a couple days, like a week, I have time to do them. It's just that I can't do them all at once, so it's about, like, spreading my time equally and being a balanced person. And that's hard, because right now, like, after the new year, it's gonna be, like, I'm gonna have 4 jobs and, you know, be a mom and all this other stuff that I normally do, so it's gonna be a lot of work, but we'll get it done. And I might just have to start live streaming at night because I'm gonna have to work in the mornings. Like, so. But we'll make it all work. I've been really stuck on this Jewish stuff lately. Although yesterday was nice. Like, I think yesterday was, like, one of my favorite streams because watching that guy just, like, totally almost laugh at... Hi! I don't know how to say your name. Mafood CCJ12346. Hi! Thanks for joining us today. What was I saying? I don't remember now. I just saw Leon's thing. It says, I cast critical thinking and a bonus action. I cast tip. That's awesome. Oh, I was talking about the Ray Comfort one yesterday. I think that's my favorite stream so far because, yes, the guy was about to laugh. It was hilarious because it was like, he's totally trolling Ray Comfort right now, and Ray Comfort has no idea that he's being trolled. And that's why I thought it was so funny that he, like, actually posted that video, like, for everyone to see. Because anyone outside of the Christian religion would realize, like, the guy was messing with Ray Comfort. I only got halfway at work today. Oh, yeah, it made me happy. Because that's the first video I've seen of Ray Comfort where it wasn't, like, the guy actually agreed with him and, you know, was like, oh yeah, you're totally right. This makes so much sense. Like, I need to ask Jesus into my heart and be forgiven. Like, no, this guy was straight up like, you are wrong. Like, what are you talking about? Like, that is not okay. And I don't believe that. And I think you're being ridiculous. And you could tell by the smirk on his face. Like, it was great. If you didn't watch the Ray Comfort video yesterday, you definitely should, because it gave me the biggest smile I've ever, like, had, just seeing someone mess with Ray Comfort in such a way where he was basically being trolled and didn't even realize he was being trolled. Or he did realize it and he just ignored it. I don't know, but that was fun. I definitely enjoyed that. So, yeah. Go back and watch Ray Comfort if you haven't. I won't spoil it for you, Omega, because it was really exciting. And it was nice to see someone, like, put Ray Comfort in his place and just be like, no. And, like, when he tried, it was just funny. It was funny. Thank you all for coming today. This has been fun. It was nice to, like, listen to this lady's story, because it sounded a lot like my story coming out of the church, and, you know, I think Ray has a script he follows closely. Oh yeah, I was talking about that too on the video, because, like, the church I used to go to was very, like, they were obsessed with the Way of the Master DVDs. Like, we would watch them so much, and people, like, in that church, like, they worshipped Ray because I'm gonna potato on Final Fantasy XIV. Awesome. Way of the Rooster? No, Way of the Master. It's a DVD series by Living Waters, which is Ray Comfort's ministry. But he sells all these DVDs, and they're basically just him talking to people on the streets and basically telling people that they're wrong, and that if they don't follow the 10 Commandments, they're going to go to hell. And then Christians eat that crap up because they'll sit there in church and be like, oh yeah, he's going out, he's telling people the gospel, he's saving people, he's doing what he's supposed to be doing. The problem is, like, people who don't agree with him and, you know, tell him off or tell him that he's wrong and stuff, like, he doesn't normally put those in the DVDs. It's very much one-sided, where it's like, whatever Ray said is, like, the smartest thing in the world, and whatever the other person said is, like, not. And I think that's why it shocked me yesterday that he actually had a guy that was, like, making sense and talking more logically and being like, well, this doesn't make sense. And then Ray just kept going on with, like, his script and not caring about what the guy was saying, because it's not about actually talking to people and having a conversation. Like I said in the past, a lot of missionaries, like, they don't teach you how to have a conversation with people. They teach you how to convert people. It's very one-sided, because it's never about, like, having a conversation with someone and actually listening to what they're saying and taking in what they're saying and realizing what they're saying and processing it. It's like, you shut down anything that'll make you disbelieve, and you just do everything in your power to convert that person, regardless of what they say or what they do. And that's just not how reality works. And Ray oftentimes will only put people in that will agree with him, because it makes him look like he's the smart one and everyone else doesn't know what they're talking about. But then when you get someone like we did yesterday, it's like, oh, that's a good question. Like, why is it that way? But instead of Ray going off on that and going, oh yeah, like, we should discuss that, we should really look into that, like, no, he has this script where he's like, no, this is God, he says he does this, it says he is this way, that's just how it is. And he doesn't dig deeper, and he doesn't use logic and critical thinking to really dive into those deep issues. And that's the problem, is Christianity is very surface level, where we don't dig into the issues, because we don't have an answer for the issues, and we can't fix the issues. So we're just gonna go with this shallow, like, this is the gospel, believe it or not. And that's why the church is purging people, because a lot of people are realizing now that those issues need to be dealt with, and they need to be talked about, and you can't just shove them off anymore. The whole, like, God did it, or God's ways are higher, or God is mysterious, or he works in mysterious ways, like, those things don't and can't work anymore, because people have realized that it's not about just believing. You have to have evidence to back up what you believe. And they lack that evidence, and they lack those critical thinking skills. And until they're willing to admit that, and admit they don't have the answers, and admit that there are things they don't understand, and yeah, they might never understand them, but they can't just shove God into those holes. Like, they have to be like, you know what, I don't know. Just like atheists say, like, there are things we don't know, and we are 100% okay with saying we don't know. And Christians can't do that, because they've been programmed to say that God did it, unfortunately. But anyways, thank you all for coming. If you guys want to be on my Patreon, or be a patron, patreon.com/overprotectedatheist. You can find me on YouTube, Overprotected Atheist, Twitter, OP_atheist, Facebook, Overprotected Atheist, Instagram, Overprotected Atheist. Excuse me. I think that's all. Oh, or you can just find everything I have on my website, overprotectedatheist.com. I know Christmas is coming, so if you guys want any merch, I got merch on Teespring, Just look up Overprotected Atheist on Teespring. I have Hell Fries merch. I have OP merch. I think there's like one more. Oh, and I have Break Out of the Bubble merch with like my bubble, my logo and my bubbles. So, yeah. I think that's everything. Thanks, guys, for coming. Hopefully I see you all tomorrow. I don't know what time I'll be on tomorrow, but I'm trying to at least try to be on every day, even if it's not exactly at the same time every day, but I'm doing my best. And my schedules are, everything's going to change after the first of the year, so yeah. Bye, friends. Have a good afternoon.
When we sing the servants' quarters, they do show them.
Here. But we're not done yet, so we will be. Another 4 weeks probably. Behind this area here, well, we didn't show you here. I don't usually go this whole thing, but we'll go over here. You even know what this is. Oh, this goes into the house, and then
He was lost. He was lost. He had no idea.
What gets me about this too, and I don't think I've said this yet, but if, let's say I'm Jeff Bezos, you know? Let's say I'm an asshole and I don't care about any of the moral or ethical implications of buying a $500 million house, right? Just get all the moral stuff off the table for a second. If I have that kind of money, why am I buying a house someone else designed?